So welcome everyone to our session today. So today we're very honored to have with us Mr. Jay Ng. Jay is our alumni and he's now the Managing Director at STACS, which is a blockchain development company that is focused on digital transformation of the finance industry. So I think today he's going to share with us his views on blockchain in finance and walk through with us some of the experience that he has learned in STACS. So previously, Jay has led the investment team responsible for managing URA's proprietary funds of approximately $1 billion. Yeah. So over to you, Jay, and we look forward to your session.
Thank you very much, Professor Wai Fong. And I think firstly, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here to be able to share a little bit about something I'm rather passionate about, and that is utilizing technology in various fields, here in finance in particular. Thanks for the introduction. And I think just a little bit more about myself is that I started my career in traditional finance. And as I think through, so I started my career actually right before the global financial crisis. And, I think over the last 10, 12 years, we have seen how technology changed a lot of the different functions and different departments of capital markets and finance. And one part that has not really been changed as much is really on the post-trade part of the workflow. And STACS very much is a solution utilizing blockchain technology to then address some of these issues in post-trade. And of course, as a result of working on this part of the business, we do have some conversations around adjacent parts. We talk about digital identity, perhaps even insurance and other verticals. But by and large, I think if I go back to the core of it, that's really where we are focused on. And so now being in fintech, we are based in Singapore, and STACS, we are a team of about 50 in all. And really our product is on enterprise blockchain. So I think because of the crypto boom and bust, sometimes blockchain can be viewed very much as a cryptocurrency type of industry. But I think where we are coming from is something that's quite different. And personally, when I look at blockchain, to me, it's really a network of value exchange without intermediary. Yeah, but of course, that in a very short few words doesn't really address how it is in the industry. And I think today, maybe as I was preparing for this, I think one way is really to have a very real life practical approach. And I'll go through a case study that right now we are working on. And this is a live production project for eSpring and BNP and ourselves as a three-party working group. And why I want to do that is really to let people know that I think blockchain as a technology is actually more like the internet technology. And it's actually a little less about cryptocurrency on its own. And to me, cryptocurrency is a subset of the entire blockchain as applied to industry and verticals, and what blockchain can actually do and transform, not just finance, but I think many different industries, but of course for ourselves focusing on finance. So our clients and partners and people that we work with, I think it varies quite widely. Here I write exchanges, investment banks. I earlier on talked about this case study that I'm going to talk about. That's with eSpring, and that's an asset manager. And I think it really ranges from many different types of players in the industry. And something that I'm going to talk about is about ecosystem and network effect. And that's also because blockchain is something that requires many different parties, and that's where you can really then have the real benefit of blockchain in an ecosystem. I'm going to go through very quickly the next few slides, mainly to introduce ourselves, because I think to start, if we get the context of who we are better, then perhaps during the case study, it will become clearer. And I think if I look back to the core of what we do, it is one simple reason that capital markets are too complex today. The diagram on my left actually shows many different parties, and that is happening today whenever you want to buy and sell a security for that matter. But with blockchain, I think what can happen is that a lot of these manual steps, replicated steps can be eliminated or enhanced. Yeah, so very importantly, right at the start, I want to emphasize that what we do is not really to come and disrupt financial institutions. We don't think that is the right way, because financial industry is a little bit more complex, for just any other fintech, especially in capital markets, to come and disrupt. What we are about is to enhance, empower financial institutions. For example, a custodian, today, whatever manual process that they're working on, can we use technology? Can we as a company help to make the process internally better? And thereby, if we can also help them come up with new revenue streams, then that is how we think that we are going to value add the industry. In terms of the workflow, just give a very simple example here. If we talk about the issuance all the way to the asset servicing of security, be it a bond or maybe equity, what is happening is that I think with technology, with blockchain, we are able to compress some of these sequential events into concurrent processing. So I think that gives a few benefits. You save time, naturally you save money. And I think a lot of it, if it's automated, for example, using smart contract technology, then you actually reduce the errors. And errors can then, of course, lead on to inefficiencies. So I think in blockchain, these are really some of the ways that it is helpful to a workflow. And as it's helpful to a workflow, it also helps the institutions. And in terms of projects, again, just to give a very broad overview, I think as a company, we are the infrastructure, we are the technology, and we are about empowering and enhancing workflow for financial institutions. So these are some of the projects that we have successfully deployed. Many of them are longer term projects. For example, later on, I'll be talking about Project Mercury as a case study. That is a 3-year long project over 3 phases. And but even in the first phase, it is production ready, whereby how do we define? It's actually really processing some of these live trades from the asset manager. So these are some of the areas or verticals that we are working on. Many of them we cannot really name the clients, so we put a national flag there. But I think the more importantly is just to say that it ranges from the lifecycle management of securities. We're talking about trade operation for asset managers and brokers. And this is something that is actually released, I think, last week. The phase 5 report that is released by MAS, and how we are involved is that as a capital market or securities blockchain, we are integrated to the payment network, which is the UBI network. And what we have been able to show, again, firstly, last November during Singapore FinTech Festival, and last week in the report that MAS has published, is to say that we are able to have delivery versus payment across 2 different blockchain networks in a matter of seconds. And I think that in itself, that prototype in itself is rather transformational. Of course, we have other use cases like payments clearing and exchange and in invoice securitization here, which actually came up from a Malaysia Development Bank because of COVID. So I think the purpose of this sharing is to give a bit of an understanding of what we do, and that may help you understand maybe some of the other sharings that I'll be going into. And I thought maybe before going into a case study, it'll be interesting to talk about what are some challenges on the ground. As a startup, we are rather young. As a startup working with many big financial institutions in this industry. So which industry are we in? Again, we are in enterprise blockchain, and our clients are regulated financial institutions, the likes of DBS, the exchanges, the regulators. So personally, I find that on the ground, there are three main challenges. Firstly, it's really always the technology perception, whereby if I want to adopt a new technology, does that mean that I have to replace and cannibalize my current systems? And that can be a very scary thing. And there's always this inertia to change. And on our end, I think what is very important is to communicate to clients that it is not about replacing current systems. It is about the ability to integrate into the current systems that they are using. And in blockchain, the ability to also integrate as necessary to other blockchains. And for example, talk about Ubin. That's one good example. Ubin network, as of phase 5, is on JP Morgan's Quorum network, Quorum blockchain. So in our work with them, it's really about integrating the STACS blockchain to Quorum. And I think that's also something that as we start to educate our clients about, that's something that's really important for them to understand and to realize. The other two are less tech, but it's a very real practical problem. I think firstly, as a fintech working with big companies, as with any big companies, I've worked with big companies myself. I've worked in various different organizations. I think bureaucracy and red tape sometimes can slow things down, and that definitely increase the sales cycle. And I think that is one difficulty for a startup. For startup, we do want to move a little bit faster. We don't have all the cash that allows us to burn through years and years, trying to get management to buy in. So that's definitely one practical challenge that's facing the industry. I think the last is really thinking about blockchain and how it is useful, because I think a lot of times you really get network effect when you have more participants in the solution or in the ecosystem. However, it may be difficult enough to get people to come on board, but if you're talking about big institutions, that is going to be really difficult to have big banks coming together, agreeing to work with each other. And bear in mind that some of them are competitors to start with. However, on the ground, what we have found to be really quite effective to address both the second point and third point regarding bureaucracy and basically getting institutions to collaborate is what we call a minimum viable ecosystem. And I think that, again, in the Mercury case study that I'm just going to go into in a minute, that really has both the integration part, whereby it addresses the inertia to change, and also the minimum viable ecosystem that addresses difficulty of getting institutions to collaborate, and also starting with a smaller pinpoint that potentially has the ability to scale up. I think that addresses, C-suites coming on and saying, okay, I don't mind, starting to work on this smaller pain point, smaller project, but with the potential of scaling up into something much bigger. So I think with that, the Project Mercury in this case is really one case study that I thought will be interesting to share with the audience here. And essentially, it is a collaboration between eSpring, asset manager, BMP. In this case, BMP is actually an outsourced middle office for eSpring. But obviously, because BMP is a big bank, they also can fulfill other functions, for example, as a broker, and STACS as a technology partner. And the story, how it came about really is eSpring has been very innovative. I think I was seriously impressed with how fast and how innovative they moved ever since we first got in touch. And I think in a matter of 2 months, we held some design thinking workshops. We went through just with various teams. I think internally they had some competition, and to say, okay, let's throw out a lot of pain points. Let's think about how technology, especially blockchain, can be used to address those pain points. And as we journey with them very quickly, in a few months' time, we came to a pain point whereby eSpring, they decided, okay, this is a pain point in exchange traded derivatives that today is causing them a lot of inefficiency because the trades cannot match. And that inefficiency basically cost them 4 hours daily. It's not a big thing, but I think it is irritating enough that they do want to try to solve it. But I think more importantly, it also allows the project to then quantify some of these benefits, whereby if I am able to say, in phase one, I'm able to have some of these cost saving, I'm able to reduce the number of trades that cannot reconcile. And if I'm able to do that, then that gives me some additional benefit to say, let's move on to the next phase. And if I can move to the next phase, it also means that perhaps other asset managers are facing the same issues and the other brokers are facing the same issue. Can we then start to onboard more players, more institutions onto the same platform? And with that, I think that the scalability is really what excites every one of us on the team. And I think the management also can see that from a small project, if you can scale, this can potentially become something that's quite meaningful. Yeah, so that's really what Project Mercury is about. And so right now, as you can see, as I talk about the minimum viable ecosystem, here we are talking about asset manager, we're talking about brokers, in this case, because we are talking about exchange traded derivatives. There's executing broker involved, there's a clearing broker involved, and then there's a BNP involved, there's the outsourced middle office and back office here. And this is the current workflow. So I'm not going to go through, the workflow, but I think most importantly is to say that you recall earlier on, my first challenge is that does it mean we are here to replace all these and replace the systems and workflow? No. So what we have done is that now look, in phase one, if we come in, we integrate and we start to do something small, but something that's meaningful. So what are we doing? Again, what is the problem? The problem is that why are the trades not reconciling? It's because the fee schedule is wrong. It sounds ridiculously simple, but this is a real problem that exists in the industry today in this space. And what is the solution? One solution is, now look, let's have the STACS team build a blockchain, and on the blockchain, let's build some applications. And in this case, let's have the application store data on the blockchain such that the blockchain becomes a golden source of truth for data, in this case, fee schedule. And once we have that golden source of truth, you cannot have various databases that is happening today, storing a different version of the data. And that causes a break. Once we have a golden source of truth, we can then calculate, build an application using the data that's on the blockchain and using that to calculate the fees. And I think, so this is live. We last checked, I think it went down from 62% of the trades not reconciling down to about 15%. Yeah, so and we did this in a matter of 1 or 2 months, So this is a very simple first step. But then with the same underlying infrastructure, we can then talk about different things. We can talk about, now look, with the same solution, with the same blockchain infrastructure, can we have auto trade matching, not just between executing brokers and BNP and the asset manager, but also clearing brokers. And this is again to help solve a very real pain point. So today, basically the executing broker have to give up a trade to the clearing broker, who then acts as a counterparty. Now, if this trade is given up to the wrong broker, suppose it's supposed to be given up to Citi, but it's given to JP Morgan, I think that causes a lot of inefficiency, and there's implication. Perhaps the margin can be wrong, and there's some cost involved in all that inefficiency. So since we have the golden source of truth, we have a blockchain platform that multiple parties can then come and be using, we can start to do things like that, auto trade matching, and further down the road, we actually plan to have even more. Can we then go down? I will talk about auto trade matching here in phase 2. Can we then start to have more parties involved and start to look at perhaps even tokenized assets? Talking about asset managers today in the fund distribution, in the process, I think it's still very manual. It takes sometimes you even require to fax your orders. Why don't we start tokenizing some of these funds? And when we say tokenize, all it means is that the fund now exists in the digital format. And once you exist in the digital format, can I then start to be able to move this fund? Of course, on the other hand is the payment. Can I do that digitally on the blockchain? And I think the answer is yes. But again, if I think about that sort of a use case, at the very beginning, that may be too much because it requires too many parties on board. That may be too much for a start, for a minimum viable solution. So here you can see that a minimum viable ecosystem of 3 parties using a very small pinpoint, and we build something that is proven to work, that can then potentially scale up to be something that is much bigger and much more meaningful. So I hope that is helpful in helping the audience, perhaps from my lens, looking at some of the industry, some of the challenge and how we are trying to address those challenges. And I think the last part really is to just give some insights and sharing about how I personally view the industry. So again, the industry here, I'm talking about fintech generally. I think 2 things. It is a sunrise industry. Why? Because from a technology point of view, blockchain or maybe even AI, these are sunrise technology. Plus, I think both from the fintech point of view and also from the existing traditional institution, fintech obviously is growing because we are proving that a lot of this technology is going to be very helpful in improving efficiency and maybe even looking at new ways of making money, revenue streams. But at the same time, we can already see that the traditional financial institutions, they themselves internally, I think they are hiring more and more tech people. I think it is quite famous in the industry that some of these banks, they are hiring more programmers than traditional non-programming people. Now, at the same time, I firmly believe that it is not just about tech, because ultimately technology is a tool. And what is the tool for? The tool is to solve a problem. And where is this problem coming from? Problems come from people. So I think at the same time, perhaps sometimes there's a myth that, to work in fintech, to work in technology, I need to be a programmer, I need to be an engineer. I think more importantly, of course, granted, those are really important. But I think equally important is that, do we have people who come in, who are able to empathize, who are able to understand the problem on the ground, who are able to think of solutions, who are working in business development and solutioning, and then you working closely hand in hand. So here I write people and tech, working hand in hand with the technologies to then come up with solution using tools to solve problems. Yeah, so this is my encouragement, because I myself, I don't come from a tech background, but even now as I'm hiring, we do have about half in non-tech roles, we have about half in tech roles, and I think the non-tech roles play as equal a part as my developers and my technologies. So I think that's just 2 main pointers that I want to leave with the audience, that fintech is a sunrise industry, and do consider this industry, especially in the new normal post-COVID era, and also that people or soft skills are as important as the technical hard skills. So that is the end of my sharing. Professor, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jay. That was a very insightful session. Yeah.